Good morning. Welcome back to the Return Homestead. My name is Mike, and my wife Marty and I homestead 50 acres in southeastern Kentucky. We have a guest house on the property. You've seen us tear this room apart. This is the laundry room, or at least it will be again, and today we're going to start putting it back together.
And this all starts with a trip to Lowe's. We got to get some 2x4 studs, and right next to them, just above these 2x4s, are the 2x3s we need. Be sure to check out the end grain on all of the boards you buy. Make sure you're not going to buy something that's going to split when you hit it with a nail. Do a quick visual inspection of the board, but don't worry too much about these bark lines. It is a stud after all. We'll need several sheets of drywall. This is Easy Light. It's 1/2 inch thick, 4x8 sheet, easy to work with. Electrical switch boxes, a switch, and a couple of outlets. Don't forget the drywall screws, 1 5/8 coarse thread.
Like we discussed in the last video, we've come in and cleaned these studs off as best we can. They're not perfectly clean, but they don't need to be. All we're doing is hanging the drywall here. Once we're done with that, the tape and mud guys are going to fix any problems that are left with us having an uneven surface that we attached it to. So all that's left to do now is to get those extra studs in place that we talked about, so we'll have good drywall support and firm these walls and this doorway up a little bit. Once we're done putting all the studs in place, we'll get to dealing with this electrical, but we do want the good lighting in here for right now, so we'll leave the electrical for a moment. We're going to start by firming up this doorway just by getting an additional stud stuck in along this 1x3 that's here. So we're just going to get a good measurement, make a tight cut, and nail the new stud in place. So at 82.5. Wanted to start by showing you guys the difference between a 2x4 and a 2x3. May not have been obvious while I was shopping at Lowe's, but you can see there is a full inch difference between these two studs. The 2x3s are going to be for the interior walls where we're replacing that 1x3 material, and then the 2x4 is going back in that corner where we needed to add some drywall backing. So we're going to set this one aside for now. Get a measurement on this at 82.5. So at 82.5 inches, we're going to make a mark. Always remember that when you're making a mark, it's not going to be straight. You're never going to know where on this line is actually the 82.5 mark unless you make 2 marks. And then the point of the V becomes where you make your cut. So once you've got your mark, it's a simple matter of placing your pencil on the point of the V. Gently slide your speed square up to it, make a quick line. It's always a good idea to put a mark on the piece that you're going to be cutting off, and I'll explain why here in just a second. So now we know where we're going to cut, we know which side is being cut off. All we need to know now is where to line the saw up. Now the front of your circular saw is going to have a V to mark where the blade is, but it doesn't tell you where both sides of the blade are. That's why you need to mark the part that you're cutting off so that you make sure the width of the blade is in this piece of the wood and not in the piece that you've already measured. We want this to be exactly 82.5 inches, and if we put our saw mark right on the line, then we're going to lose about a 1/16 of an inch. So I want to cheat over till the line almost disappears. And that's going to put all of the blade of the saw on the piece that I'm cutting off. Now, if you're unsure of a circular saw or you're not comfortable using one, use your speed square as a guide. It's a great way to keep the saw lined up, running straight down the line. Now you notice when I made that cut, I just let the cut in fall directly to the ground. One of the biggest mistakes that I see new people using a circular saw for the first time doing is they'll want to try and support the piece that they're cutting off. They don't want it to fall too quickly to the ground. And what ends up happening when you pull up on it is the board's going to pinch down on the blade. You're going to bind the blade and it's going to stop it from moving. The easiest and best thing to do, just let it fall to the ground. So we got our board cut to 82.5 inches. It should fit right inside of that space. If it's a little snug, that's good. Means we won't be counting on the nails only to hold this up. It's going to have some tension on it as well. I do see that I've got some sort of a fastener here and another screw up top that I'm going to have to deal with before I can squeeze this board in. So let me take care of those and we'll be right back. So we got all of that metal out of the way. We got the stud in place here. All that's left to do is nail that thing off. So that's going to give us a much firmer place to attach a door. And yes, you can use a hammer if you want to. As a homesteader, you probably should know how to swing one, but a nail gun is a whole lot easier way to do this. On your nail gun, you're going to have a little switch that's going to give you two different settings. In one setting, you have to place the head of the gun and depress the bezel and then pull the trigger. The other one allows you to pull the trigger and hold it while you simply pop to fire nails. Once you get the hang of it, it's a pretty quick way to set them. May have a hard time seeing this on camera, but I talked about how the lumber is not perfect. You notice right through here that my 2x3 sticks out a little bit. It's not quite square, but that's not a problem. All I'm gonna do is square it up top, nail it off, and then apply a little pressure as I walk down, get the nails in there, and that'll put the board right into place. Always make sure when you're using a nail gun to treat it like a gun. If you've got your hand anywhere out in front of this gun when you pull that trigger, there is the potential of that nail going all the way through and hitting you instead of the wood. So make sure you keep your hands off to the side and clear downrange. Much tighter. Just a reminder that in this wall we were adding a stud so that I would have some place to mount a switch to on the inside. We are leaving the switch on the other side, which is already mounted into the drywall. That's for the light switch on the inside of the bedroom, and we're trying to avoid tearing that drywall out. So I'm only adding the one stud to hang the one switch. But when you hang a stud in the middle of the wall, there's no board to nail it off to. So when you're doing that, the first thing you want to do is get the stud in about the position you want it. And then you want to make sure that you're plumb. Always use your level to make sure that you have that thing straight up and down. Is it critical? No, it's inside of the wall. It's not structural. But when you go to hang drywall and you're trying to drive screws directly into this stud, you'll be really glad if it goes in a straight line. So take a minute to make sure that the bubble is in the center and that you have this thing plumb before you nail it off. Now the easiest way to secure this is to toe nail the nails in. So we're going to go in at an angle from the side. Typically when you build a wall, you're going to build it with the wall laying on the ground, and you'll be able to drive your nail through the bottom plate and directly into the stud. When you're adding a stud to a wall that's already up, there's no way to butt nail it. And that's when you want to toe nail these things in. So to properly toe nail them in, you just want to have your gun set at an angle. Make sure you press in nice and tight. Make sure you're not too far up so that the nail can penetrate both boards, and pull the trigger. It's always helpful to have some nails in the gun. When you're loading your nail gun, always take a look at the angle that the nails are going in. If you've got them in backward, it's going to be really hard to drive them. Plus, the gun's not going to operate. So make sure you're putting them in the correct way. Slide those in from the back. Push the little button and pull the release pin. Boom, you're ready to go. So again, on that toenail, just make sure your gun is at about a 45-degree angle. Push in on the board, pull the trigger. You're going to have a little bit of the nail head still sticking out. A lot of people get nervous about this and they'll go swinging a hammer at that to drive that nail head in. It's not necessary. We're going to be putting drywall over this so nobody will ever see that that nail didn't get completely driven in. A couple more nails just to hold it securely in place. One from the other side just to make sure it's tight. And we go up top. Your nail gun does apply quite a bit of force, so it's always a good idea to check your plumb before you drive the nails in up top. Sometimes you have to work with the angles you've got a little bit. Remember, we don't need this super secure. It's not structural. It's just there to hold the drywall. The drywall will do as much of holding the... So we want to reinforce the corner of this wall, but as you can see, we've got a wire that we need to deal with here. In order to get the stud to slide in behind this one, we're going to put the stud flat inside of the wall. That will give us enough room on the outside where the drywall will have some support from this direction. So we're going to have to notch the 2x3 that we're putting in here so that it will slide over the top of the wire. So let's go cut this to 82.5 inches and I'll show you how to notch that board. So this is the stud we're going to be putting into that wall where we need the wire to go through the stud. We've got it cut to 82.5 inches and that wire is 12.5 inches from the bottom of the, or top of the bottom plate. It's hard to say, top of the bottom plate. So that's where the wire is going to need to go through. Make a mark, 12.5 inches. Now the wire is thicker than that mark is going to be, so we'll want to add some additional room on either side. So that'll slide in right around that wire. So what we need to do now is to cut out this section of wood. The easiest way to do that is to go onto the edge of the board. We're going to mark off the area where we're going to remove. Make sure we know where we're removing. And then we're just going to set our saw depth on the skill saw. There's a lever on the back to release it, and that'll allow you to move the bottom plate of the saw. And then we'll just take a quick measurement. So that'll get the blade about where we want it. Tighten this up. And then we'll make a bunch of cuts that are about 1/8 of an inch apart on the wood, and then knock the wood in the middle out. There we go. That'll go around the wood. We won't have to worry about that wire anymore.
That hit me.
Got me all over the face. So we're going to insert this stud into the wall flat. So we're going to turn it the other direction inside of the wall. And, well, this happens sometimes when I'm using the saw. I have a tendency to cut things extremely tight. This one's a little too tight, so I'm going to shave it up real quick and we'll give it another fit. All right, so we got that shaved down. Just pulled about 1/16 of an inch off of the board. And that should fit right into place. We round the wire in there. Not quite. That'll get it. Well, this happens a lot when you're doing a remodel. So when I measured the stud, I cut it to the right length. I got my notch in the right place, but I wasn't thinking about the drywall that used to be on this wall. So this wall was covered with drywall before this wall was built and installed up against the drywall. So when I installed this stud tight to this wall, I ended up 3/8 of an inch proud of the actual wall. Now this may not seem like a big deal, but when you go to hang drywall, we're not going to be able to hang flat here because that stud that I just put in sticks out 3/8 of an inch too far. So we're going to figure out how to deal with this one. We'll be right back. All right, so we got that board pulled loose, got all the nails cut out. Went ahead and turned it so that it's properly aligned with the rest of the wall. And you can see now there's a gap so that we have a perfect plane down this wall in order to hang our drywall on. One other place that we're going to need drywall backing, meaning that we need some place to screw drywall into, is right here against this wall. This edge of the drywall on this wall is going to have to be supported. We've got support in this direction, but not in this direction. So I am going to have to add a stud in here through the insulation. That's going to require us cutting the insulation in order to squeeze it in. We'll slip a stud in, toenail it top and bottom, and that'll fix this corner for us. When you're doing the building yourself, it's always a lot easier. You know exactly how big the wall has to be. You know all of the studs are going to be exactly the same length. Makes things really simple. Builders have a tendency to keep things as uniform as possible. So walls will typically only be 8 feet tall. Your studs are always going to be 16 inch or 24 inch on center. Now typically that's because your sheet goods like drywall are always going to be 4 feet wide and 8 feet long. So everything will always hit in the middle of a stud. When you're doing a remodel though, you don't know how this was put together. So you need to take the time to make sure that you measure before you cut every single piece. Now, as we were coming around these walls, cutting these extra studs that we were putting in, I measured once starting at the door at 82.5 inches, and every single one of these studs was 82.5 inches. When I got to this corner, I went ahead and cut my stud for the drywall backing at 82.5 inches. The difference is this is a load-bearing wall, so we have a 1.5 inch thick header up here or top plate on this wall, but on this wall it's only 3/4 of an inch. So we actually only have 81 inches inside of this stud bay, so I'm going to go cut this board down to size and we'll get it nailed in place. So we decided since this was drywall backing and it doesn't need to be structural, we'd use a 2x3 instead of a 2x4. That way we don't have to cut this insulation. We've already got enough of this fiberglass flying around, so that way we can just compress that insulation a little bit and we'll have what we need to hang the drywall.
And the compressor kicks on again. There's not a lot to see here. You're not going to miss much. Just me fumbling around with the nail gun trying to get this thing toe-nailed in. It was getting late in the afternoon. It was actually well after dinner time. So we moved on from here to starting to look at the electrical, but I was getting kind of punchy, so we decided to call it a day. And we'll pick it up there next time, working on getting the electrical boxes mounted, landing the wires, and getting everything lined up to hang drywall. Thanks for joining us here on the Return Homestead today. Please subscribe, hit that like button while you're in there. We'll see you on the next video.